Okay, welcome to this session. Thank you so much for all of you that have come. My name is Francois Strydom. I am the Director Academic of the Center of Teaching and Learning at the University of the Free State in South Africa. I will be doing, I guess, the monologue bit. Don't worry, I won't break into song. Then Paul Mogatle, one of my colleagues, will join in, and then Dr. Liz Lange, our DVC academic, will also participate in the group discussion, and I hope there will be some very interesting discussions. So, of course, the picture of our favorite father, as we refer to him, Madiba. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And to stay with the theme, that color has changed a lot. To stay with the theme from his very famous biography, and you would know the movie, I guess, The Long Walk to Student Success. In our country, I would like to share with you. So let's look a little bit at what I'll talk about. I'll give you a sense of the context, which I think is very important. I am deeply grateful for this opportunity to talk. The wonderful hospitality that this is, I think, my fourth dream, the wonderful hospitality that we've received every single year from people that attend this conference is amazing and rejuvenates all of us to go and do our work back home. Welcome, Bill. I'll talk a little bit about the people that do inspire us to do our work, which are our students. It's a bit of a longish video, but it'll give you a sense of who our students are in South Africa. And then I'm going to share with you a couple of case studies. The first one is around broadening access, then engaging students, and then some initiatives that are showing promise in changing student success. And finally, I'll talk about the development of a South African dream, which is thanks to a lot of patience and support from the Kresge Foundation. So the language check is there, not for me, so I break into Afrikaans because I'm a second language English speaker, right? There are going to be some terms that I might use that in some American audiences where I've spoken, I got people's backs up. So one of those terms is the term colored. It is a significant minority in South Africa, and it's a group of people that are a result from intermarriage between the settlers or colonialists and the indigenous people, right? If there's any word that upsets you that I'm using, it is not intentional. I won't start swearing in English, you don't have to worry. Right, so if there's anything that's not clear, please put up your hand immediately and I'll explain. Okay, so we've done that. So where we are, we all have heard the joke that some people think that Africa is a unitary state. There's 53 more or less states, depending on where different countries are. Those of you that have Ebola worries, Ebola is about 4,000 miles that way. We're here, right? So, okay, the most famous spot is the Kruger National Park. This is the Kalahari Transfrontier Park, and it's across 3 countries in the size of France. Okay? I am from Bloemfontein, right, in the Free State. There's many of my colleagues here from a lot of inferior states around. Okay, so the Free State, Gauteng, is the economic powerhouse of Africa. The Western Cape, very ugly compared to the Free State. No, it's a beautiful, beautiful part, and insane amount of movie activity goes on there. So there you get a sense geographically of where we are. Higher education institutions are spread throughout. I'm not paid by the tourist industry to promote our game parks. I just know it's something that people can relate to. Okay, South Africa, 52 million people. People might go like, oh, how can you have a problem? It's only 52 million people. Sometimes South Africans do that about Namibia. Namibia is our neighbor, and they've got 1.2 million people. Right? There is the split. Very, very different makeup to the US. Right? 11 official languages. Yes, that's right, 11. Right? No South African speaks one language. Does not exist. We all speak more than one language. Most people can speak English. A lot of people can speak Afrikaans. English and Afrikaans, but Afrikaans is, I don't know, my colleagues should help me, what, 5% of institutions maybe use Afrikaans as the language of instruction. So the predominant language of instruction is English. Our economy, 27th biggest in the world. Our stock exchange. This is some of the achievements we've had after 1994, a massive increase in the middle class, but we have, especially the black middle class, massive problems. Here's 9 of them identified by the National Planning Commission. And the key problems we are facing is eliminating poverty and reducing inequality. And one of the key focus areas is our poor educational outcomes, and too few South Africans are employed. I was talking to some of my colleagues in the previous session. My colleagues can correct me, but depending on which statistic you use on an annual basis, our unemployment rate can be up to 23%. In some of our impoverished communities, one of our campuses, Putadichaba, it's a gorgeous part of the Free State, a beautiful part of the country. The unemployment rate is 80% in that community. So massive challenges that our students face. So what would education look like if I were to try to show you the diversity in pictures? That school is not pre-apartheid. That picture is from 2012. Right? They thankfully, through private sector donations, have now received mobile classrooms, if I've got it right. It's in Limpopo. That is grade 4. Yes, that's a grade 4 class. I think that might be grade 3 or 5, depending on which direction we're going. So that, poor schools, right? Then you've got good government schools, right? Phenomenal stories, fantastic stories of some of our government schools. Some of them are in big trouble. And then you've got immensely wealthy schools. So this is the Oprah Winfrey Academy for Girls, right? It's in the Gauteng province. And this is Michael House in KwaZulu-Natal. And the Spud movies, if they did the circuit in the US, are set in that. It's incredibly wealthy schools, very good education, right? So that's the diversity of the education system. Don't worry about the details on this. I want to say 2 things about this slide, right? Firstly, after the release of Nelson Mandela, our new government had the unenviable task of integrating 23 departments of education's qualifications into one. Because there was an education department for every race and in every geographic area. So one of our wonderful achievements, I still say, is the creation of the National Qualification Framework, which has, you call it K to 12, it's grade R to 9 is the general education, NQF level 1, my 2, then further education and training, which is 3 and 4, grades 10 to 12, and then higher education has now become more specialized with a sub-framework, with a higher education qualification framework. So there is a qualification framework. I attended conversations yesterday about the DQP of the Lumina Foundation. We did that on a national scale, right? The sector publicly is small, only 25 universities. You would refer to that as 4-year institutions, and mine is one of those. And we have a private sector. That's not 124 institutions that are private. Those are people that provide a higher education level qualification. So these people might have a blend of FET and higher education. So the only message I want you to get, South Africa also has a diverse system, and it is in a framework. Right. Our big challenge, our numeracy and literacy rates are extremely low. We have a very complex educational legacy and history. Our numeracy and literacy levels are, for 5 years and longer, were the bottom of TIMSS and PISA. Not close to the bottom, they were the bottom. our numeracy and literacy levels are lower than many sub-Saharan African countries, despite the fact that we spend more money than they do per student. Right, and that's a conversation in of itself. In terms of participation rates, this is 2009 and UNESCO statistics. Here you can see how South Africa compares to other developing countries, but also if we were to look at Western Europe, what our participation rates look like, right? In terms, so our challenges, not surprisingly, better success and throughput rates, pass rates, graduation rates, quality teaching and learning. We have to differentiate our system, build our capacity to do research, and in 20 to 30 years, we want 50% of our population to participate. Right, so that's all the contextual stuff. Now I want you to meet the students. So these students were asked what helped them in teaching and learning and what hindered them to be successful.
Well, some of the positive things I could say would be extra classes, like besides the lecture room. Like we had for extended program, we had like facilitations and tutorials, and we were grouped in smaller groups compared to like the large classroom groups. So there we had to discuss different things that we learned in class that we are going to learn that you don't understand. So I think that is one of the things that really helped me in terms of learning, and I think the availability of resources in terms of the computer lab and the libraries, you know, we had access to go and get more information in terms of that. So I think that is one of the positive things. And again, one of the positive things would be going to meet the lectures during consultation, you know, going asking them about a certain question that you don't understand. I think that also kind of like helped a lot.
What helped me, or one of the things that have helped me what has helped for my teaching, helped my ability of learning in terms of teaching and learning. It's one of the tutors. I feel like the sessions with the tutors, because in my anthropology class we have like they allow us to come up with our scripts where we've answered the questions, and like they look at how we have the way that we have answered the question, and whether it goes with the content or whether it goes with the criteria of marking. So it helps us to see where we went wrong and to rectify them. So it really is helpful, because we know that this is how we're supposed to answer questions and this is how we're not supposed to answer questions. And another thing is in my EBUS lecture, and she usually comes with past question papers, and she's like, we must answer those questions. Where we don't understand, we come to her, or we bring those questions in class, so that she can sort of elaborate more on the questions and help us to approach them in a certain way or in a certain position. And the other third thing that has helped us to better our writing is especially the right side at the library, where we have to go, like if we have like group assignments, we go there, we consult with those people that work at the right side. They help us to structure our essays and to see the approach or the flow of how the essay is supposed to be. And the content that is supposed to be like the content that we should include that is most important, because we can't just include things that are irrelevant to the question that or the essay that we're supposed to finish. So another thing that really is key to improving our writing and improving or bettering our writing is really utilizing the right side, because it really has helped us mostly in our assignment.
When I did come to the University of Free State, I knew what I wanted or which course I wanted to do, but what I didn't know was my academic standards or what the university expects of us in terms of the learning part or the writing part or any academic things which are related to the university. So being, at first I didn't want to be in the extended program, but I realized that being on it helped me tremendously understand what is university life, what is expected, what is the kind of standards that they want from us students, which were from high school to that transition between the two, from high school to university. So those little developmental modules did help, even though it was a drag, but they did help a lot in understanding a lot of things. My writing skills drastically improved, how I studied, how I managed my time. So that also helped positively in terms of me learning. And some lectures also really did go above and beyond to help us understand during that time where we were mostly confused, but they did help and saw that we can do better, and we did.
The confusion or the hindering of students' ability to learn is when everything happens around campus, especially in terms of social issues. Some lectures tend to deal with those things in a certain manner. For instance, if ever in my class there are certain students that are performing lower, instead of the lecturer approaching saying that we need to understand why these students are not performing, they just say, if you don't study, you're going to fail. If you study, you're going to pass. It's like they don't care whether, they don't find the source of why they're not performing. They just say, we're teaching a lot of students. Some excuses will be, I have like 1,000 students. I can't just go individually and ask them, why aren't you performing? Why are you performing? So instead of caring more about the students, they just say, if I get a 70% pass rate, then it's fine. But at the same time, they don't realize that we do make efforts. Students do make efforts. If they fail, some don't make efforts, but most of us do make efforts because we want to graduate, we want to better our lives, because we come from different backgrounds and we want to better the lives of our family. So I feel like lectures need to have, there should be a relationship between lectures and students, because I feel like there's nothing. It's like water and oil. And that I really don't get, because lecture is supposed to help students better themselves, and at the same time they could learn something from students, because it doesn't mean if you're a professor or if you're a doctor something, you can't learn something from an undergraduate.
No, I think in terms of the negative side, I have to put it like mostly on my side, because we have to come to lectures prepared, and for me, I just go there just to sign the register, to be honest. You know, it's a thing of I will prepare when it's time for the test or it's time for the assignment. So I think it's about time management, where I fail to kind of like to plan my things in time. So I think it's time management, then failing to plan, you know, planning your things accordingly. Yeah, I think so. And again, being afraid to ask in a huge class, you just be like, okay, now I'll check it later, you know, pivot away. Stuff. So I think that is my negative side. From the lectures, I'd say not interacting with students that much, just being there to give us information then leave.
I think the reason why we lack so much confidence within the majority of students is because the institution doesn't offer that platform to say, when you're a varsity student, this is what you can do and this is how life is. But rather, it gives you just the knowledge and then you will have to see for yourself. This is my view. I think that education should be more than just getting the information, but rather building you and equipping you with the necessary skills so that when you are done, when you say, I have this degree, what will you be able to give out to the world? You understand? So I think if we can change that, the way we do things within the education system, then things would be fine.
I don't know whether I have now permanently scarred PowerPoint, so let me just see where we are. I seem to be having a glitch. Okay, there we go. That should work now. Here we go. Okay, so some of the issues you saw raising by the students, I'll talk to directly, and hopefully some of those very important voices will generate some questions as well. So the first area I want to focus on is broadening access, and I want you to give some contextual understanding. Most undergraduate degrees in South Africa are 3 years, whereas in the US it's a 4-year system, right? So one of the students referred to the extended program or extended degree program. That is N+1, so it's 3 + 1 years, and the typical model is where the first year is stretched over 2 years plus developmental courses. Right. University of the Free State, on top of that, has got the University Preparation Program, which is an access program where students, it's N+2, they perform themselves into the extended program. Right. So there you have the landscape of access in South Africa. In terms of the UPP, it will look familiar to you. Credit courses, here we have commerce, humanities, natural sciences or science. And here are the developmental courses. Some contextual differences, some conversations we've had over the years at DREAM, is that academic development in South Africa has moved away from more generic language courses to integrating the language development in broad disciplinary fields. So there will be academic literacy within the context of commerce, within the context of humanities, within the context of sciences. And sometimes when we've seen presentations here, it looked like there was sometimes more a generic approach to it. We found in our context that there wasn't good skills transfer from a generic course into the discipline. And if you embed that work in the discipline, it was more effective for our students. So, does this work? We've got about 20 years of data showing you how many people graduate. These are students, and this program started in the early 90s and continues because of our principled commitment to the fact that apartheid scarred our country deeply. And if you look at what the education system still looks like, we have to look at ways of opening up the system. So, there will be 2,272 people without degrees if we didn't have that program. An honors degree is 1 year qualification on top of a bachelor's degree, master's, we have some medical doctors, some PhDs, and last year, 91% of those students who are viewed as very underprepared, and many institutions would not take them in, transferred into the institution, right? Why? This is going to shock you, I know, because you've never heard it. You have to pedagogically innovate all the time. The staff in the UPP are continuously trained and have very sophisticated curriculum development skills in terms of creating scaffolded materials that helps the widest variety of students. All students get their textbooks when I could do a Big Mac comparison, but my math is not good enough. A South African textbook is equal to, what's a Big Mac in South Africa? 30 Rand. So you could buy 30 Big Macs? 30 Big Macs for one textbook because of international pricing, right? Our students cannot afford international textbooks. I can give you the history, what happened to the big printing houses, and somebody that started importing books cheaper from Korea, but we don't have time. Class sizes. UPP does not have class sizes, and you would not see those as small class sizes. For us, that's small, right? Regular attendance, academic advising, administrative support. Engaging students. We have been working with the folks at Indiana Bloomington, George Koo and the Nessie staff, as well as with Kay McClenny and the SESI staff on creating the South African surveys of student engagement. This is what the engagement levels look like for the 2014 sample. None of my South African colleagues have seen it. We still have a challenge. You saw the student, oil and water, right? Significant challenge around student-staff interaction. And we have some very serious questions to ask ourselves why that is. Is it because of massification? If you have a class of 1,000 Psychology 1 students, can you really engage with all of them? How much do you want staff to engage with your students? Some staff you might not want to engage with students at all, because it will be better for them, right? And there's first years and seniors. This theoretical work, the empirical work of engagement, informs many interventions, and I'll talk about a couple. So just to give you a sense of the surveys and how we use them in South Africa, at the beginning to profile the incoming first-year students, a little bit later in the year to see how they actually engaged, and lecturer you can substitute for faculty survey of student engagement. And then we have the CLASSI, and that's also American. It was created by Bob Smallwood at the University of Alabama. And this we deploy in high-risk courses or modules where there's a low success rate. That survey is filled in by the students and the staff to see where they are missing each other. And then it's linked to Barclay's book on student engagement techniques. If we look at BUSI results, I don't know how much this would translate. It would be very interesting to hear. Our students expect university to be about the 27 out of 60 in terms of difficulty. Right? Now you saw the preparedness levels, right? So how can they think it's not going to be difficult? And of course they see themselves as extremely prepared. Right? Now that might be the hubris of adolescence, because many of our students are adolescents and they think they can conquer the world. What typically happens in the system is the rude awakening that difference actually exists happens with the first tests. Right? So this data poses very serious questions about how do we advise and orientate our students. Right. This is the national, and this is to illustrate how the data can be used to compare an institution, that is us, and the average hours. I think the average US hours is higher, if I remember correctly. This is where you compare two surveys to each other, and guess what? Staff don't think, whether it's seniors or first year, that students are trying their best, but students think they are trying their best. The point, of course, is not who's right. The point is, why is there a difference? Are expectations not being clearly articulated to students? Are our staff aware enough about where our students are and what they come in with in the institution? So, I'm not going to read this quote. It's a little bit long, but basically we did some qualitative work. We don't only use quantitative evidence or data, we also use qualitative data. And when we were reviewing, we said to students, how do you understand what it means to be prepared for class? And this is the student everybody wants. He prepares, he even prepares for his practical classes. The majority of students in South Africa are this group. They take a bath, they pack their books, and they make sure that they look good for class. Right? So what I did is, at all the presentations I did across the country, I would actually point, and I might do it here, but it is another country. I don't want the international incident. So I would ask somebody, who told you how to prepare for class? Thank you. She was a first-time college student. She made it up as she went, right? That was 99% of the academics' responses to whom I talked. So my question to them was, wouldn't it save us time if we actually told students what it meant to be prepared for English 1, Mathematics 1, Engineering, Science, not just in the orientation program, because how are they supposed to know? By far the majority of our students are first-generation students, right? Some things that are having an impact, further case studies that I just want to check my time. Right, so the new tutorial program, my staff are rebranding it because they said, Francois, you can't call it new if it's 7 years old. I said it's more metaphorical, but they're not agreeing with me. We did centralized training, and it's a hybrid SI model. It's the most pervasive model in the world as far as I know from the SI community. We had 3 very explicit goals with this. 1 was to create a space for peer learning. 2 was to give our students skills that actually makes them more marketable. And 3, and in South Africa this is very, very important, is to create the next generation. Because we are not getting a lot of students going into academia as a career. And we have 19 students since this program started that have been employed by our own university, the majority of them from previously excluded groups. Right. Here you can see some of the stats. These are the students that participate in the system. It's across 6 faculties. There's the amount of tutors that we coordinate, the amount of modules or courses we work in, the number of students. Our total student enrollment is 30,000, so a third of our students go to tutorials. We give about 11,000 hours of tutorials a year, right? What do we know from 7 years of data if we compare those that attend and those that don't attend? 5 tutorials is for us sort of the point at which you have the majority of impact. You can see past 5, it still goes up. This is one faculty, Economic and Management Sciences. The same trend repeats itself in all the other faculties. Right. The PASS program, the Program for Academic Student Success. Now you remember the university preparation programs that were in classes of 50. Guess what happened to them when they hit big lectures of 1,000, 400 students, 300 students? We found that only 30% of them would graduate in time. So the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation gave us some money. If we have time in question time, bring me back here. It's a very beautiful story. Right. So we created a high impact support program for UPP students specifically. And this data is a year old, so we can't claim a longitudinal trend. But we wanted to create better support for them, connect them to the campus, but we limited ourselves to only using 16 hours a year. Because these students are already taking developmental courses. These students cannot stay long on campus after hours because South Africa has got security and crime problems, right? These students we can't keep them long and late at night. So we had to find a high impact way of supporting these students. So our academic year runs with a calendar, right? Currently, it is between 95 and 105 degrees in Bloemfontein. So it's been a seamless climactic adjustment for us, right? We have the kickstart session, right? Then we've got a teaching and learning community. April and here is the exam boot camp. Then in the June exams, many students sometimes fail a course, so we've got Wake Up and Shake Up, another TLC, a motivational speaker, and the exam boot camp. We talk to them all the time through these media, right? The most beautiful quote for me here is that one. Sessions like these boost confidence and reassure you about your ability. It's not about being coached for exams. It's about knowing that I'm not alone as a first-generation student. That is what the group is about, right? This is all beautiful, Francois. Where's the stats, right? Longitudinal project, mixed methods, so again, qualitative and quantitative evidence. We do tracking system. Every single session, we get the feedback and the data is immediately analyzed to inform the next session, right? Because we have so few. This is the good news. A 4% difference for only 16 hours. Right, now that might not be, whoo-hoo, can we write home about that? If you can shift up the pass rate of our institution by 4%, that is a very significant amount of money, right? So my boss, who's no amount of performance pressure, she's right here with me. We, of course, want to look at how we can scale this and take it across the institution as a way of supporting students. Academic advising, well, Francois, we're all familiar with that. In South Africa, this is actually not a very familiar term. It's called something else. Some institutions call it curriculum advising. But I would say my best guess is we're about 30 years behind the US in terms of academic advising development. This definition as a developmental process, you will all understand. In terms of our focus, systemic level first. We went and we analyzed how many credits, you would call it credit hours, our students enrolled for, and lo and behold, we realized that there was some massive credit overload. In other words, students were registering for many more courses than they were supposed to. Now, people can look at this and say, oh, University of the Free State, they have no discipline. Have they ever heard of blocking somebody on a computer system? Well, the problem with computer systems is that people work them. And when you have desperate students whose extended family are funding every dime they spent, all of those people are pressurizing them, not directly necessarily, but indirectly. A lot of people are paying for me to be here. I need to finish quicker. You become your own worst enemy, because when the administrator says, no, you can't have more credits, you go to the department head. You go to the dean. You go back to the administrator, trying to find a weakness somewhere. In other words, somebody that will feel sorry for you. So this was a big wake-up call in terms of not killing people with kindness, and that we had to have very strict discipline in the system. You can see declining trends almost everywhere. This, too, is because we are revising the curriculum. So there's a transition period there in terms of the overloading. Is medical science ever going to fit into the national standards for the curricula? No, the professional board always allows for more. So there's always going to be some students that overload. But this is a systemic intervention with credit overload. And this is credited at our institution with resulting in already an increase in the overall pass rate. We do, again, the qualitative research to see whether it's really helpful for students, and that would be very familiar to all of you that academic advising does have an impact. Our dream, it's called Siyaphumelela. We succeed strengthening the capacity of data analytics for student success. That's the journey we've started on. There's the website. The 4 institutions that have started on this journey are Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University, Free State, University of the Witwatersrand, and the University of Pretoria. It's coordinated by the South African Institute for Distance Education. It would not have been possible without Kreski's support and help. I should have put the dream symbol there because I very strongly believe that The successive cohorts that were able to come here have created a tipping point, Bill, in terms of getting enough people there. Having the privilege of sitting with Bill throughout, Bill Moses, various people in the audience that have always helped us, has created that tipping point for us to get things started. And our national department is also coming to the party. And in South Africa, the national department is a very significant player through the teaching development grants and the way they want to help support and develop the system. That is a lot of information in a very short time. Back to the wise man. It is what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life that we lead. Thank you very much. So now my colleagues will take all the difficult questions that people might have. Any questions that are unclear, questions that you have about possible differences, similarities, comments that you might have? Yep.
Well, a curriculum is one of the problems that we are facing. The situation was as follows. For many years, the University of the Free State had a curriculum that looked like a supermarket. So you came in with your trolley and you shop courses. That's one of the reasons why, besides the kindness of people, the students could accumulate 900 credits in a year. There were not very many rules of progression, and they could almost combine anything. So in the last 4 years, we have tried to redo that thing in such a way that you create path, you know this concept, that the students can follow and can be advised in relation to that path. But we are still in the process of doing that, because at the same time that we are doing the restructuring of the curriculum, we are trying to look into the content of the curriculum and how our programs can be more conversant with the discourse in the different disciplines at international level. So that's what we are trying to do.
Any other questions? But they don't, students also transfer, just to add and elaborate on that, change courses. And because career counseling has been taken out of the school system to a large extent, not completely, but to a large extent, academic advising is absolutely vital in trying to help students early on to make sensible choices. There was a hand. Yep. Witty, do you want to take that one? Witty Green from the department.
Between the different kinds of institutions. We do have a system of colleges in South Africa called Technical and Vocational Education and Training Colleges. And they operate at levels 3 and 4, as Francois has said, and should provide articulation and access into university studies, but often don't because of concerns around quality and capacity. And it's one of the issues that we are working on in the country, to open those access routes so that we can have articulation between the different kinds of institutions.
Other questions? Yep, sure.
For the university preparation program, which looks really promising, and then also the 1+3 model that you showed, how do students pay for the first year or the first 2 years? How do they find their way to financing a longer education?
So extended degree programs, they can get national funding, the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. Very recently, there's been a change in policy. For the last 20 years, the UPP has been donor funded. And actually, it started out with the South African mining house giving the money for it to start, right? So we find, and my South African colleagues cannot hear this part, that donors are actually very keen to try to provide, but the fact that government has now come and created an opportunity through the higher certificate to create support for students shows a lot of promise. But donors have been very good for us. Any other questions?
We often are looking at achievement gaps between different groups of students progressing through. Do you see those kinds of differences in your own student?
Who wants to take that one? Massive achievement differences. So it's, as you saw, the first aim there was throughput and success rates of underprepared students specifically is a massive focus for the system, because the majority of our population are still, or the majority of the population at lower socioeconomic levels are still African black students. We have a very big difference there. There was another hand somewhere. Yep.
One of the objectives of our version of DREAM is to reduce the difference in the achievements of white and black students in the country. So this is one of the issues that we're trying to do.
Okay. Anything else? Any other questions? Well, if that's, yep.
What do you think is the biggest challenge on your campus? Is it getting more students to take those preparatory courses, to have clearer pathways? Is it to reduce equity gaps? What would you say is the highest priority on your campus?
Change the consciousness of academics. We have the experience, we have the methodology. What we need is more academics to actually want to play this game. The change of culture is the most important thing and the highest priority. That's what we need to do. All the rest would fall into place if we can get the academics to tone that. That's it.
Ditto. Anything else? Oh, yeah, let me put that. It's a very nice note to possibly end on. Okay, so I get sometimes very emotional with this story, but we are at the end, so it won't be too bad. So, race relations in South Africa has always been tenuous, and the University of the Free State is positioned in a more rural, agricultural context. And because of where we come from, where not just for 40 years under apartheid, but for 300 years, what was of a different color, and in that case mainly black, was inferior. White men grew up with a sense of superiority and still a sense of entitlement. So, the interesting thing about the university preparation program is that you might think this is just for black students, but there are 15 agriculture students that are white in the university preparation program. And this speaker over here was failing most of his courses before pass and wanted to be a motivational speaker. After the pass intervention, his average was, we work in percentages, was a distinction, 75% for his courses. And we brought him back as a motivational speaker for the next cohort. Now, with the history I've just given to you, I welcomed them and I listened to the motivational speaker. And from the back of the room, and they started a bit rowdy at the back, the agriculture students, this agriculture students walked from the back and shook that speaker's hand and said to him, I struggle too. And I didn't make them pose. They didn't, there was some sort of help from above that I spotted it in what was going on in class. But a beautiful testimony to the transformational power of education. Thank you.